It's time for Windows Weekly. Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley are, I almost said here, they're not. They're in Dublin for a big cloud conference put on by Micro Warehouse. They have lots to talk about. Of course, we're going to mark the passing of one of the founders of Microsoft, Paul Allen. Talk about the Windows 10 version 1809 update, take 2. And since they're in the EU, Google versus the EU. Google decided to send a sharp elbow to the European Union. Paul and Mary Jo will talk about that and a lot more. It's all next on Windows Weekly.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Windows Weekly with Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley, episode 591, recorded Wednesday, October 17th, 2018, live from Dublin. Windows Weekly is brought to you by Capterra. Find software solutions for your business needs. Capterra is a free website with over 600 categories of business software and thousands of reviews from software users just like you. Visit capterra.com/windows today. And by Rocket Mortgage by Quicken Loans. Introducing Rate Shield Approval. If you're in the market to buy a home, Rate Shield Approval locks up your rate for up to 90 days while you shop. It's a real game changer. Learn more and get started at rocketmortgage.com/windows. It's time for Windows Weekly, the show where we cover the latest news from Microsoft. And today, Paul and Mary Jo are on the road. They are in Dublin, Ireland, at the beautiful Micro Warehouse for Cloud Camp Dublin. Yeah!
With a couple of friends, one or two.
And it's late night there, so they're all inebriated.
Surprisingly, not a...
No.
We arrived on a Sunday morning. It was like a post-apocalyptic hellscape out there.
Yikes.
You know?
Was it raining? Was it snowing? Was it...
Oh, it's been beautiful.
Really nice weather.
Very nice.
Yeah.
And
I think they lie about weather here. I've heard
Like
a lot
Seattle.
about rain, but
yeah. Tell us about Cloud Camp. What's that?
Cloud Camp.
we have no idea. We don't.
Is that where you are? Is that where you are? I'm sorry. Did I misunderstand?
Yeah, no,
No.
we spoke at the Cloud Camp, so it's
We did. So Cloud Camp was a fantastic one-day event from Micro Warehouse here. We were the keynote speakers. No one knows why, but there were a lot of other good speakers who did other tracks about Azure, hybrid, Windows Server, security. Yeah, it was a great event.
And
we
what
were
was-
kind of the fluff.
What was your fluffy keynote about?
Mostly we talked about each other. It was actually kind of surfing.
It was. We talked about how we used to hate each other, and now we sort of only hate each other a little.
It's so romantic. Yes.
It was.
It's so romantic. Well, great.
No, it's good. Good
Great.
event.
And thanks to Micro Warehouse, we're at some lovely venue. What is the venue we're at here?
Yeah, so
Dog
this-
Patch Labs.
Right, so it's not a dog grooming place like I thought when I walked up. It's actually kind of like a WeWork type place where
Right.
people can come.
Except way more awesome because we're
Yeah.
in this cavern that has this tiled ceiling. It's amazing.
Yeah, so this is kind of a cavernous room, and there are a bunch of these. Actually, there's a bunch of these all over the place. So this building used to be where they stored the barrels, right, that would go on the
Yeah.
ships. So it's kind of an old smuggling place, I guess.
Oh. And now we see the beautiful stone wall behind you, Paul. That's gorgeous.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's amazing.
That's really, really neat. So let's get to work, shall we?
Yes.
We have things
Yes, we
of
must.
which to speak, and sadly, the first thing is the death of Paul Allen, which kind of came out of the blue. I remember, I worked for Paul Allen briefly.
Oh, yeah, you
He
did.
owned Tech TV.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah, never invited me to the yacht.
So my
sad to say.
suspicion with him is that this had happened actually some time ago. And remember there was an announcement about a month ago that he was being treated for cancer. And of course you hear that and you think, well, this just happened. But I now think that maybe they understood that he was going to pass.
Right.
And they felt like they had to come out and say something.
So he left
Ahead of that.
Microsoft abruptly in '82. He was one of the founders of Microsoft, a high school friend of Bill Gates.
Right.
And Bill was at Harvard, and with Steve Ballmer, and they read about the MIT's Altair computer, and Bill says, we got to go write a BASIC for it. Paul Allen's still back home in Seattle, right? Do you know the Genesis story? I think he is.
That's correct. Yeah.
And then, but Bill and comes rushing out. They work on a basic. They bring it down to Albuquerque, where Mitz Altair is. Show it to them. It's picked up, and they form a company which starts in Albuquerque, eventually migrates to Seattle.
That's right. So MIPS and Microsoft started. We're both on Central Ave in Albuquerque, which is one of the biggest dumps in the world even today. And
it's like it was a storefront,
a strip mall.
Yeah,
it was a strip mall.
And then, so now they unfortunately in '82, Paul gets sick. He gets Hodgkin's disease, which is cancer, and retires abruptly, taking a fairly big chunk of stock with him.
I actually, thinking about that again, it occurred to me that his story parallels that of Steve Wozniak a little bit, right? So Steve had gotten into an airplane crash, I think it was, or helicopter crash. Right. And he was gone for some time. And he did come back for a little while, but he sort of realized, this isn't the same place anymore, and I'm not really super excited about this right now. And he also, he kicked around a little bit, but he pretty much left as well, right?
Yep. I didn't start covering Microsoft till 1984, so he was gone when I started. Like, I knew who he was, but I never really interacted much with him. So, yeah.
He was...
Except once.
Oh, you want to tell us about that?
Well, I told the story at Cloud Camp, but so I was at a party in Seattle once. I think it was an Adobe party, and it was this huge party. I was up on the balcony, and I looked next to me, and it was Paul Allen, and I'm like, it's Paul Allen. So I went over. I'm like, hi, I'm Mary Jo Foley, and he just walked away.
Wow.
I don't know why. Yeah.
Mary Jo has that effect on a lot of people from Microsoft.
My experience of him, because of course, as owner of Tech TV, we would see him from time to time, is that he was a very shy guy. And
very shy.
He may have just been, shy, and not shunning you, but just
No, I think he was shunning her. I'm pretty sure that's what it was.
No, he didn't like hanging out with people. Although, except for the yachts later in life and the supermodels and stuff, but yeah.
According to
but you have a brush with death and you realize what's important.
No, you get it. I think that's absolutely true. Paul gets it because he has a brush with death every time he looks in the mirror. Paul Allen was actually a programmer. He had a 1600. I'm reading the Wikipedia biography. 1600 SAT. Went to Washington State, but dropped out like Bill Gates did to go to Boston and work for Honeywell. And it was he who, according to Wikipedia, convinced Bill to leave Harvard to create Microsoft.
Yeah, he had found the Byte magazine or whatever it was, a Popular Computing, Popular Mechanics maybe, I guess back then, Popular Science, whatever the magazine was, that had this computer on the cover and said, we have to go do this.
Yeah, if you've seen the Triumph of the Nerds, the great early history of Silicon Valley, he comes running into Bill's dorm room with the magazine, says, Bill, get up. We got to write a basic for this. I
need a yacht.
So apparently Alan Gates reportedly asked Alan to give him. He left in '82 after receiving the Hodgkin's lymphoma diagnosis. Gates reportedly asked Alan to give him some of his shares, the Microsoft shares, to compensate for the higher amount of work being performed by Gates. According to Alan, Gates said since he did almost everything on BASIC, the company should be split 60-40. Paul Allen agreed. Gates later, this is Bill Gates in a nutshell, later attempted to make it 64-36. A year later, after Allen left, he tried to buy him out at $5 a share, but Allen wisely refused and left the company intact with his 40% of Microsoft. At his death, he was worth about $20 billion. He was quite a philanthropist. If you've ever been to the Experience Music project, or now Mopop in Seattle, beautiful Frank Gehry designed museum. He was a Jimi Hendrix fan, so there's a Hendrix museum, but the Mopop is all about the history of rock and roll, and it's just a fantastic museum. Yeah. He gave more than $2 billion to charities through the Paul G. Allen Family Foundation, and eventually signed Bill Gates' Giving Pledge. In 2010, the pledge that Bill Gates and Warren Buffett put together to get tech billionaires to donate, promising to give at least half of his fortune to philanthropic causes. And he's quite beloved, I know, in Seattle. So it's,
well, he bought the Seahawks. He bought the Portland Trailblazers.
That's right. Yeah.
And he,
he revitalized that whole area of Seattle as well.
South Lake Union. If you go to where Amazon is now, he's responsible for that whole development in Seattle. So he's a total rock star in Seattle.
Yep.
But one of those people who walked around Seattle and nobody really knew who he was.
Yeah.
So
he was very unassuming. I remember, when I met him, he was at a Tech TV party. He was wearing a baseball jacket and just kind of standing there, kind of alone. He had a yacht, quite famously, that had a recording studio in it with a full-time engineer because he loved to play music. He was a rock and roll guitarist, and it was there in case he ever wanted to go down and record. It also had a submarine in it that because he was an avid avid diver, but he didn't like jumping into the water, so he got, the story was, and I don't know how apocryphal this is, but it was told by managers at Tech TV to me, managers who'd visited the yacht, that he built the submarine so he could just emerge gently into the water when he wanted to dive. So, he did. I mean, he was an amazing guitar player, by the way. If you ever look up clips of him on YouTube or anything, he wasn't just like good; he was professional quality. Yeah.
Good.
Oh.
Yeah,
kind of a neat story, and idolized Jimi Hendrix. He gave a significant amount of money, I think $30 million, to build the SETI alien telescope array in the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. Funded a census of the elephant population in Africa for $7 million. He was really quite generous with his money. His sister, I remember, ran most of the business, Vulcan Ventures.
Yeah.
And that's how we became part of it.
Let's not forget Cinerama.
Right, Cinerama.
That amazing single screen theater in Seattle, which he restored just because he loved it and he grew up watching movies there. And they never made a dime, but it's still running today.
That's neat. Yeah. So he will be certainly missed. He died of a resurgence of the cancer. Oddly, he retired from Microsoft because of Hodgkin's lymphoma, and passed away of non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. But he was in remission for most of that time, from '82 till recently. So, absolutely a part. Unfortunately, I think that a lot of newcomers to Microsoft and Windows don't remember, but a huge part in the founding of Microsoft.
Yep.
All right. Shall we move on?
Yeah, let's talk about Paul Allen for a few more minutes, shall we?
Yeah.
We have some other things to talk about, though.
That's true.
Well, go ahead. Do you want to talk about Windows?
Do we want to talk about Windows?
Yeah, why not?
All right.
I'm just looking at your rundown, and if you want to take a little break before, why don't you know what? You're in Ireland. I think. Do you have a glass you could raise to Paul Allen before we move on?
I have a glass of water, sadly.
I get some water.
Wait, you guys have wine? What's
I'm good.
Raise a glass. If you're at home, raise a glass
to
Paul.
Yeah.
Of course.
Microsoft, if he hadn't roused Bill Gates from his undergraduate slumber
from his lair,
we might not have Windows. We might not have Microsoft.
True.
Actually, that wouldn't be such a horrible world.
Oh, stop it, Paul. You wouldn't have a job, dude. You'd still be covering the Amiga.
Actually, that sounds pretty good.
Paul is jesting.
No, we do want to talk about 1809, the missing in action version of Windows. Like, where is it?
Where is it, Mary Jo?
It's still nowhere. It's moved from the fast ring to the release preview ring and the slow ring. So it's getting closer to coming back after it was pulled.
Yeah.
But it's not yet ready still. Maybe sometime this week.
I think, I bet they do it Friday.
Friday? Yeah.
So it's happening. So we're like, what, two weeks out, I guess, from when it was supposed to come out?
Right. It launched October 2nd. Was pulled back October 6th or so, and has been missing ever since.
Right.
Yeah. Because of compatibility issues, the known folder bug that they had, then a bunch of other bugs also that have cropped up since. with Dell PCs, with Intel audio drivers. There's been a lot of things.
You and I have been talking about this Dave Cutler video. If you folks haven't seen it, you should look at this up on YouTube. It was actually recorded 2 years ago, but the Computer History Museum out in Mountain View, I think, sat down with him for about 4 hours, and he talked about his entire history in the industry from DEC and Microsoft and so on, and everything he's done, and revealed a bunch of stuff I don't think people knew about.
It's a great video. Like, just go look for it.
It's fantastic. Just look up Dave Cutler, Computer History Museum. But buried in there somewhere at the 3-hour mark or something, he talks about data loss.
Yeah.
And he literally said, we at one point had this one customer that had data loss. Data loss is the biggest sin in the industry. This is completely unacceptable. We halted everything. We fixed it. And you kind of flash forward to today, and they've got this data loss thing, and they're kind of downplaying it.
Yeah.
What was the figure? 1/2 of 1%.
Of 1% of all people are affected.
You have to think like Dave Cutler would be punching holes in the wall. If he was
probably
running.
Is.
Yeah.
Wasn't that the subject of G. Pascal Zachary's book, Showstopper? I think it was.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's what the showstopper. Yeah. That's a showstopper. If you have a bug like that, you stop.
The Dave Cutler kind of history of Microsoft, he ran NT or Windows, well, I would call it NT, I guess, through NT4, I believe. And he kind of got out of it because Windows became a big thing, right? Yeah. So for him, a manageable team of people was 40, and
then it blossomed out to 200 people,
4,000, and then he's like, I don't want any part of this. Yeah. And so he became a participant instead of the guy running the show. But you can't help but think we need that kind of level of detail orientation, today. But we don't have it.
No.
Anyway, they'll fix it eventually, probably before November.
Hopefully, since it's called the October date.
They started pushing it back out to insiders last week, right?
They did.
Right. So Fast Ring was last week. Sorry.
Have we heard any issues with it?
Nope. No, I think they actually found the problem. So the Fast Ring went fine. Tuesday, they released it to the Slow Ring until release preview. Mm-hmm. If they followed the normal trajectory, it'd be Friday, but they might want to hit for a Tuesday just because of whatever. Tuesday is a thing for releasing Windows. But I would say in the next few days, it should be done again.
But we should mention Windows Server, since we're here at Micro Warehouse. Mm-hmm. And that also got pulled back. For a minute, it was on the download server. Like, I saw people saying they saw it. Or on VLSC, maybe, I don't know. People saw it, and then suddenly that was pulled back too. And I was reading an article this week that said, you know what? They actually never RTM'd server. It never actually did. It just went straight out without RTM because I guess they think this is a good new way to do things. I don't know. Mm. But there are all these incompatibilities with existing hardware because it didn't RTM the traditional way. So there are some things that need fixing in the pipeline of how Windows is done.
Yeah, for sure.
Just saying.
Yep. We probably beat that to death last week.
I think we did,
but let's spend 10 or 15 on it today.
No, let's talk about the pre-installed apps thing. I'm excited about this. You just told me about this right before the show. Tell me more.
So today, Microsoft released a new build of the next version of Windows 10. So this is the one that will be coming out in the spring. And I guess the big new feature this time is you can uninstall more of the built-in applications, right?
Like Candy Crush?
Well, you can already uninstall Candy Crush. But unless you use PowerShell, it's not possible to do something like right-click uninstall on things like 3D Viewer, Calculator, Calendar, Groove Music.
Notepad?
Notepad's not included. Mail, movies, and TV. These are all like modern apps, right?
Yeah.
Paint 3D, Snip and Sketch, et cetera. So that's something they're going to be fixing for the next version. You'll actually be able to uninstall them as a normal human being. So that's actually pretty good.
That's great. You don't have to use PowerShell.
Right. Right. Right-click uninstall.
Nice. Finally.
That's it.
That's good.
Yeah. That's the whole story.
I'm happy about that.
That's it.
Okay.
It's one build on the way to the next misrelease of the next version of Windows 10.
Hopefully not.
Let's take.
You want the train?
Is there a train going by? Nice.
Ollie? Are we in a train station?
Paul says this is related. No, the PC industry is not staging a comeback. Sorry.
You make it sound so negative, Leo.
Well, last quarter PC sales were up by like 4%, right?
Yeah. Well, if you average IDC, it was like 1.9%. So
everybody was all excited.
We had the preface to this is that for the 6 years and 1 quarter before that quarter, PC sales actually dropped. So last quarter, PC sales kind of blipped upward and everyone got excited. In fact, Intel released a press release saying that they were going to work double time to meet increased demand for PCs. And then we got the market share figures for this past quarter, and they actually fell again. So, well, actually,
fell or flat? I think they were kind of flat. Yeah,
they were flat overall. It depends on who you talk to, but they were flat. I would call it flat.
Yeah.
Statistically flat. It was like 0.9 something. So, we'll see. I this next quarter, the quarter we're in right now, would have to kind of go gangbusters for this year to be a win.
Yeah.
I don't see that happening.
It's going to be interesting to see what happens as people start finally getting serious about moving off Windows 7, like how they do that, and if they do it when they buy new PCs as a corporate refresh or not, because that cycle isn't really fully kicked in yet.
Yeah.
So that could give the PC industry a little boost.
Well,
perhaps
we'll see, Princess Pollyanna. But I think I don't know. I sort of feel like we're seeing where the PC industry's at, right? And so. It's fallen about a third from its height, meaning that we're now somewhere in the 200 million per year range, which is still
pretty decent.
Yeah, which is great, honestly. But we were at 340, whatever the number was.
Yeah.
330, 340. So it's kind of a tough fall, but that's been the big question this year because it was near flat actually in the January quarter. It was up a little bit in the June quarter. It's flat, maybe flat, a little bit down in this quarter. So. Maybe we've plateaued.
Yeah.
And that this is the new normal.
Yeah.
So last quarter they were moving faster than Krispy Kremes in Dublin. This quarter, it's all over.
Actually,
it's funny about that.
It's funny. It's funny you said that because we heard Krispy Kreme in Dublin's kind of a thing now, isn't it?
Huge. They had to close the drive-through because people were honking their horns and the neighborhood was complaining.
Seriously, the combination of sugar and alcohol is not a good one.
Says you.
So, just a poll. What's your favorite Krispy Kreme, audience? Let's see. They haven't ever.
Anyone? Donut fans in the audience?
Anyone admit to it?
Exactly.
They're like wiping white powder off their mouths. They have no idea what you're talking about.
Is there an IPA donut? That'd be good.
That's what you need is a Guinness donut.
A Guinness donut would be amazing. It would. With chocolate frosting, it would be fantastic. I think.
You could use like nitro to fill it up.
Yeah.
Now, Paul, are you using the new Surface Pro 6 there? Is that what that is?
No, not yet, Leo. I'm expecting a Surface laptop this week.
Because they're coming out, right? This week?
They're out now.
Now.
So Brad got a Surface Pro 6. Mahedi got a little kind of polite golf clap, and I'm supposedly getting a Surface laptop.
Nice. I wanted to show Mary Jo. I got the new Acer Swift 7. She and I had S7s for a long time.
Oh, nice.
It's under 9 millimeters thick. Can you see it? Is it invisible?
Wow.
It's disappearing.
Yeah, we can see it.
That's good.
Completely disappearing.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty cool.
Is it a full-size machine? Is that full-size?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's funny when you hold it sideways, it looks tiny.
It looks tiny. I mean, it's kind of so dark you probably can't see it all that well, but
no, we can. Yeah,
it's nice. It's very much like our S7s. But you've moved on. You went to the HP Elite, right?
Yeah, I'm still on this HP. It's pretty good.
Yeah, that's why Microsoft is number 5 in the U.S. because you bought a non-Acer.
Man.
Okay.
Who is number 1? Is HP still number 1?
HP,
actually,
right?
no. It's that was the other big surprise this quarter, or the only big surprise, I guess, was Lenovo actually retook the top spot.
Wow. Interesting.
And
is that U.S. only or worldwide?
No, it's worldwide. And I think we might have talked about this briefly last week, but I was saying, it was interesting. Back in August, Lenovo came up with this really like hyper positive thing about the PC industry. I thought it was kind of weird, given how things are going. And HP kind of came out and said, the industry's dead. This sucks. And I thought that's a really dopey thing for the number 1 PC maker to say. And actually, they kind of reversed roles. So that I think explains that.
Yep.
Well, as you know, I'm a Lenovo fan. And Dell is number 3 then after HP?
Yep. Yeah, that's right.
And then Microsoft. No. Yeah.
No, I think it's Asus.
Acer or Asus, and then Microsoft.
Asus, I think, is number 4.
Really? That's interesting.
Yep.
I believe so, yeah.
Yep. Let's see. So, Mary Jo, are you going to get a laptop too?
No. They know I don't like their products, sadly. I mean, I'm waiting for the lappable Surface. I keep waiting.
You're really bitter about this.
I'm bitter. I'm like, why can't you guys make a lappable PC? Come on.
I don't know what's.
I won't tell you what Panos Panay said when I was sitting in the audience.
You're
and he
laughing
saw
at Ron?
this again. He was like, "Why are you running that?" And I bleep, 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 bleep. I was like, "Yeah, well."
It would have worked better if they hadn't put you all on couches without desks. You needed to lap.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah, at the Surface event we were at in New York, we were all sitting on these couches.
Right.
And so there were no desks. So it separated the lappable people from the non-lappable pretty quickly.
So he was going to take yours and talk about the computer, and then he saw it was an HP, and he walked
came
away.
towards me, and then he's like, no.
And then he took my laptop, and I was literally in the middle of writing a story, and I'm like, I'm writing something.
I thought you were going to punch him.
Yeah.
You got it back, right?
Yeah, I'm a little dubious about what he did to it, but yeah.
Never let your laptop out of your control.
No.
It's acting a little weird, but yes,
Oh, you're getting a new one. Did you get the matte black version?
I will be getting it, yeah.
Yeah.
People seem to like that a lot.
Yeah, I think it looks beautiful.
Yeah.
And I'm sad
Although
to
they
say
introduced
that,
a new color.
yeah, I was going to say they didn't introduce the pink in the U.S.
Yeah.
So there's two interesting differences with that computer. One is it can come in blush, right? So it's like a
Pink.
pink. I get their version of rose gold, not rose gold. It also has a less powerful TPM chip in it,
Oh, it does?
which
'Cause it's
allows the
China?
Chinese government to
Oh,
spy on
man.
that machine. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
So there's a back door in it.
Well, it's more of a front door.
Wow.
It's
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's disappointing.
Yeah. So that's why they made it pink, so you would forget about that part of it.
Wow. Well, this Google Pixel 3 that just came out has a not pink color, which is absolutely
Right.
pink. What is
okay?
I know.
those who've seen it say it's quite beautiful. I could not bring myself to order it. I had to
Is
order
it really
it.
pink?
Yeah.
I actually did order. I ordered one of those, Leo.
Did you get the pink? Because you're more secure in your
That's exactly right.
manliness than I am. Yeah. Because I couldn't bring myself to do that.
Interesting.
But I get the black is very manly, especially because it matches the notch.
Yeah, it hides.
I wonder if you get a pink notch. Will you let us know?
Well, so the pink one I got was the smaller one, so there's no notch.
Oh, okay. You got the notchless.
But isn't the button orange on it?
It's a different color, yeah.
Right. It's not pink.
Right.
Coral.
Yeah, I think the black and white ones are coral.
Bittersweet shimmer.
I don't.
Bittersweet shimmer. I love it. That's the Crayola.
The color that dies.
The color you see when you're having a stroke.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
What does Microsoft call its pink surface?
Blush.
Blush, like rosé.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
That would have been a better name.
Rosé.
Yeah.
Blush. Well, but remember, it's
Rosé.
the Chinese market. They maybe blush.
That's true.
Yeah.
Has a
Frozen.
connotation. Frozen blush. I had the interesting opportunity to play with the Magic Leap on Friday of last week.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And
It's interesting. It's not. I don't
would
think
you call
it's
it a game changer?
Yeah, it's hard to say. I mean, I haven't played with the HoloLens, so I don't know how it compares to the HoloLens. I think really the big difference is the applications that are intended for it, which is more gamey, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, HoloLens is going all kind of industrial now, right?
Yeah, vertical.
Vertical markets.
Yeah. In fact, speaking of vertical, a new HoloLens was spotted in outer space.
Yeah. So no, it wasn't, and also it wasn't out of space. So
well,
we got a weird.
How did this come? How did this come up?
There was a photo that was published on the NASA website.
It was a video
of an astronaut wearing a HoloLens. It does not look like HoloLens.
That guy.
Yeah. So everyone assumed it was like the V2 HoloLens, and obviously they had seeded it to NASA. But they didn't. This was an old photo of an old HoloLens pre-release version because NASA was one of the first organizations they had talked to. And all that excitement was for nothing. So all of the idiot bloggers, including myself, wrote something about it. Actually, I didn't write it. It was, I guess, Mehdi wrote that one. But we published a story about it and then had to come back later and be like, just kidding. Everyone got pretty excited over nothing, apparently.
Yeah. But we think the next HoloLens is next year, as far as we've heard.
Yep.
Running the AI processor and the new Azure Connect for Azure sensor. So none of us have seen this still. We haven't seen it under NDA. We haven't seen it at all. Some people thought we were going to see it at the Surface event, but it wasn't there.
That was true. And I don't.
Maybe some people in this audience have seen it under NDA, but we have not.
You can nod or blink.
You could just do like one finger like this.
One blink for yes.
So this thing that guy is wearing is not some sort of weird prototype.
It's an old photo of an old HoloLens that was before the HoloLens shipped. So it's not only not current, it's actually a couple years out of date.
It's a little cooler looking though.
It is. It's way cooler looking.
Yeah.
He with that beard, he looks like the most interesting astrophysicist in the world.
Well, he's like the one astronaut I think everyone sort of recognizes, but the original, those prototypes were tethered, right? And so it allowed the headset part to be smaller and sleeker,
right? Because
there was a bunch of stuff hanging off of it in the back you couldn't see. And I think that's why it.
One thing the Magic Leap does really well. It's got a clip-on little puck that goes, and that's all, and you can walk around it very easily and so forth. I like that. I thought that was nice.
Yeah.
And they said the person who had it, Nicole Lazaro, who is a game design consultant, said she's getting about 3 hours battery life, so it's pretty usable in that regard.
Yeah, if you're going to play a game on the thing, 3 hours is probably
plenty.
Just fine.
I didn't get nauseated in any way. I mean, as I do with VR, it didn't bother me in that respect because you could still see the world around you. I didn't. Now I know with HoloLens, you guys have talked about the kind of the limited field of vision. There's still the same thing with Magic Leap, although it's not quite as apparent.
So how would you describe it? The HoloLens to me is like a mail slot hanging in the air.
Yeah, this is not. My description comes from actually my experience in video, where you do something called a garbage mat. You describe in this case, it looked like it was a square area that will be the active area, and you'll still see everything that's outside that area. It's just that the images won't extend to that area, but it's done in a subtle way. There's feathering, so it's not a hard edge, and so it's just not apparent most of the time.
So it sounds like it's pretty tall.
Yeah, it is.
Which I would say the HoloLens is.
I would say it's a square, right?
Okay, yeah. So I would say the HoloLens is more of a rectangle.
It is.
Yeah.
A very flat rectangle.
Yeah.
I was, it works. The images are fairly translucent; they're ghostly. But I think that's the same with the HoloLens. I haven't played with the HoloLens. I've only seen the demos.
I think the HoloLens can be pretty solid looking, and I think the central success to the HoloLens is the way that those objects root themselves into the reality of the thing you're looking at.
Right.
Yeah.
And so a ball will bounce and hit it. It will appear to hit a surface and respect the physics of real life. And it's so successful, it tricks your brain into thinking those things are real.
Yep.
Right.
Like that actually works really well.
Nice. Anyway, I got to play with it, and I think that it's pretty clear that mixed reality or XR, as I think the Magic Leap people call it, is coming. But it's also we're in very early days. I think it's pretty obvious. Yeah.
Yep.
Let's take a little time out so you guys can wet your whistles, and I shall do a commercial, and I'll pot you down so no one will hear what is going on there in Dublin. Mary Jo Foley and Paul Thurrott, they're in Dublin, Ireland, thanks to Micro Warehouse. They were speaking at an event, cloud event there, and we're doing Windows Weekly from there. It's about, 8 p.m. there at 8:46?
Yeah, 7:45.
7:46, okay. So almost 8 p.m. Our show today brought to you by Capterra. Find software solutions for your business needs. I think when if you're the boss comes to you and says, we need some software to manage our office. Maybe you work at a vet's or a dentist's office, or maybe you work at a startup and you need marketing tools or CRM tools, and the boss says, do some research. What do? Do you run to Google, type in the type of software you're looking for, and then you get a bunch of listings? Is that the right way to do it? No. Finding the right software is easy with Capterra, Capterra. It's a free resource. It's basically a search engine for business software at capterra.com/windows. If you're looking for almost anything for business, whether it's a new project management tool, an email marketing solution, there's over 600 categories of business software to choose from at capterra.com/windows. It's easy to find what you're looking for. You can make a basic search, then filter results by features of the application, by the cost, by whether it's on-prem or hosted, by the license. You can even check a few different ones and compare them head to head. Make a short list, and that makes it very easy to find exactly what you're looking for. And you won't waste your time on free trials that go nowhere. Capterra has over 575,000 curated reviews from actual users of those particular programs, people just like you, so you can look at their reviews and get a much better idea of what you're getting. You'd think this resource would cost a lot. It's absolutely free. The new year's on its way. Maybe you're assigned, tasked with getting your company digitized or organized in some way. The right software is there, and Capterra will help you find it. Join the millions of people who use Capterra every month. It's really a prized resource in business. Go to capterra.com/windows to find the software that will save you and your business time. Save you time. Plus make you a hero, because you'll say, I've got just the right software. Visit capterra.com/windows today. And now we take you back to Dublin, where Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley are. It looks like you're holding court.
Yes.
Are we?
You're holding court in Dublin, Ireland.
Barely holding it together, Leo.
We are.
When do you go back? How long are you going to be there?
Tomorrow.
Do you get some time for seeing the sights or anything? Or?
Yeah, we arrived early. So my wife and I came here Sunday morning. Mary Jo arrived Monday morning.
We immediately hit some Jameson and Guinness sites.
Nice.
There's been a lot more drinking than usual on this trip, I would say. I don't know if
surprising.
I'm not sure what it is.
How fun.
We walked a lot. The weather's been great. We walked a lot.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad you're there.
It's been church, pub, pub, nap, pub.
And we do thank the folks at Micro Warehouse who've made this very easy for us to do the show from Dublin. A lot of times when you're on the road, it's a hard thing to get working, but this is going great. So.
It seems like this has been a much better run thing than, say, Microsoft Ignite.
Yeah.
Shh, quiet.
Despite the fact that they had an army of 180 people milling around, trying to figure stuff out.
Yeah.
And Cloud Camp was a huge success. I'm sure it was.
Seemed to be.
Yeah. And it was at the beautiful Dublin has this amazing convention center. It is gorgeous.
Oh, nice. Micro Warehouse.
Everything's better, Helio. Everything.
I'm going to give them a plug. MWH.ie. It's 100% Irish owned. It's very local. MWH.ie. And the venue you're in right now is what? The old Dublin jail?
So as I understand, and tell me if I've got this right, this building used to be used as a storehouse for barrels that were going out from probably distilleries or breweries.
So stuff coming in and out, so the custom house.
All kinds of things. Then. Okay.
This was probably the second largest port in the UK.
Yeah, so you're on the waterfront there.
Yeah, it's right on the waterfront. And so it's interesting because there's actually, I think of these as, I guess it's one building, but there's a bunch of stuff here, and the cellars all look exactly like this. There are these curved roofs and
who's that
stone structures,
behind you there? That's
it's
Look at this. It's like where the Beatles performed or something. That's awesome.
Yeah, right, exactly, in Berlin. It's like that.
Great.
So we ate at a restaurant last night, Urban
Brewing,
which is amazing. And then Eli has the same thing, and here it has the same. It's just it's the same old building, and the cellar part is just it's just awesome.
Yeah.
Nice.
I assume it's a pretty steady temperature regardless of the time of year too.
Mm-hmm.
Really cool. Well, thank you.
We're going to be buried in here like the pharaohs. This is going to be. We'll find us 1,000 years from now and wonder what the headset was all about.
If only you had your matte black Surface Pro 6.
I know.
Yeah.
Yes.
So since you're in, no, wait a minute. Okay, you're in the EU now, right?
Yep.
Yes. There's no.
Yeah, this part of the islands is not leaving.
No Brexit here, folks. No.
So far.
You're well aware then of Google versus the EU and what's going on right now, yeah?
Oh yeah. Yeah, and actually, so the Google announcement kind of affects you folks because I hope you bought your Samsung's phone recently. It's going to get a lot more expensive soon.
They fired back.
Yep.
This is an interesting. It seems like a punishment.
Yeah, so I'm fascinated by this on a number of levels. One of the big ones is just because Microsoft went through this, right? 15 years ago-ish or 10, 15 years ago. And their response, both in the United States and to the EU, was very belligerent. And the result was not good, especially for Microsoft, frankly. I mean, I kind of think of that time period as the lost decade. I mean, a lot of the reason, not the only reason, but a lot of the reason that Apple and Google were able to kind of surge ahead during that time period is that Microsoft was distracted, frankly, by these legal cases, which they did not handle very well. And so the thing I've always written about Google as they go through this, because they're going to go through this again and again with various things,
Right.
is that they have the experience of Microsoft and other tech companies like Intel and Apple to kind of fall back on, see what they did, see what worked, see what didn't work. And I thought, they're going to handle this differently. And when I saw this announcement, I thought it's a small twist. They're going to comply and still appeal. So Microsoft never did that. Not exactly. Well, actually, I guess they technically did. Technically, I guess they did. But I didn't really think they were following the Microsoft playbook. And then I kind of read more deeply into it. I thought, this is very similar to what Microsoft did. It's kind of a cute way of extending a middle finger at the European Commission by saying, we're going to comply with exactly what you said we should do, and we're going to follow the letter.
Yeah.
Not the spirit,
but we
the letter.
Have to charge people now because
you
made it impossible.
So I mean, sorry, there'll be more. There'll be choice. We know you like choice, but now that choice is going to cost you, but only in the EU. And so there were three things that the EU was asking for. They've complied. They are complying with all three of those things. And I don't know if it's worth going into what they are, but the important thing is that from the perspective of consumer, the handset maker and/or the wireless carrier will be charged more to get the full Android experience, which includes Google Chrome, the Google Play Store, Google Search. And those companies are not known for passing the savings along to the consumer. And so it's very likely that consumers will end up paying more for phones. And there's going to be an interesting thing going on there because the dynamic is kind of twofold. There'll be different models that will be configured differently, specifically for the European Union markets. But then we're going to have the weird situation where there's going to be the same phone, maybe sold in the United States or China or wherever else in the world, and in the EU. And the EU one, well, actually, you folks are probably used to things costing more here, I guess. The one thing that's probably kind of a constant when it comes to tech products is if you do the math on the exchange rate, that's not what the price is. And I'm sure there are reasons for that. But the prices are going to go up yet again, apparently. So. And that puts the European Commission in kind of a weird position, which I think was the point, because they're the ones who were imposing these rules on there, these basically guideline or requirements. And Google is saying, well, okay, we're going to do it. No one ever said we couldn't charge more for this. So we're going to, because now we have to pay for this thing you're making us do.
So do you think Google's justified, or do you think this is a little bit of a slap in the face?
Yes. I mean, it's tough. If Google completely capitulated, right? If they said, look, okay, fine, screw it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it everywhere in the world, even, Right. I don't think any damage actually gets done to Google because the dominance is already made. It's not going to be unwound.
They got what they wanted already. Yeah.
Yeah, and the fact that they're not doing that, is kind of interesting. And there is, it's a little more passive aggressive than Microsoft was.
Yeah.
But I would say ultimately, it is the same kind of belligerence. Whether they believe it or not, the stated response is, we don't think you're right. We think what we do offers more choice. We're going to do what you want, and it's going to cost.
It's going to cost you. Yeah.
Asterisk.
Yeah.
And I don't think it's so. I mean, these commissioners aren't strictly speaking elected. Right? I mean, Margarethe Vestager is not. How do you like that? Is not an elected official. but I think it may also be to tell other jurisdictions, hey, watch out, because we play hard. Well, they did the same thing in Spain. I don't know if you remember, but in Spain this was over the snippet issue, right? The fact that Google was including news text in their search results. And the Spanish courts said, well, you can't do that. And Google said, fine, we'll just stop referring people to any Spanish publications at all, which left the Spanish publications howling because they lost a huge amount of traffic. And I think that the point is, and by the way, I think they reversed the decision as a result.
I was going to say, last November or so, they actually did reverse that.
Yeah.
In fact, it was that reversal that kind of helped form my opinion that maybe Google was going to do something a little kinder than what Microsoft did when it came to this case. Yeah. And not so much.
No.
Yeah.
Do you guys remember, though, I was looking this up. In 2015, Microsoft did a partnership with an Android operating system vendor named Cyanogen, which has gone out of business since. But that was when that was happening, people were like, oh, maybe these guys together, Microsoft and Cyanogen, are going to try to create an Android platform that would be an alternative to Google, which never happened, of course. But
the Google licensing stuff, I have to think they have some Microsoft legal expert on staff who says, how did Microsoft stick it to PC makers 20 years ago? Because it's very similar. And there's interesting clauses in the agreement. So if you I have to make up a name, Microball or some company we've never heard of, you want to sell Android, but it's AOSP, and it's not going to come with the Google stuff. That's fine. But you can never sell a phone that does come with the Google stuff. You're screwed. Yeah. And someone like Amazon, which is one of the actually maybe the only major non-Chinese example of this, wants to sell non-Google Play Store type machines. They don't have a lot of companies they can go to make these, because once you've made a full Android phone, you can't do this other thing. Now, part of this EU settlement, or it's not settlement, part of them complying with the EU is that's actually changing, but only in the EU, right? Yeah. And so there's weird ramifications. The other big example of this is the Samsung thing, right? So Samsung wants to replace as much of Google on their phones as they can, but they can't have full Android without taking all of that stuff. They have to take all of it. So if if Samsung has its own web browser, which they do, or their own email application, which they do, or their own text messaging, or for whatever it is, they have to put it on there side by side with the Google stuff, right? Now, that's a confusing mess. It's not what Samsung wants. They want just their own stuff. It's not what any consumer should want. I mean, most people don't want that confusion. They want one thing, whatever it may be. And if they're smart enough, they can go get their own thing later. But this is part of the impact of the Google licensing requirements. You can't pick and choose. You have to take it or not take it. And once you've gone down that path, there's no going back, and there's no going and doing the other thing. And that's what the EU, that's among the things that the EU was trying to get Google to stop doing. It's completely understandable. And, they're complying. So it's really interesting. They're the new Microsoft.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and it could be punitive. I mean, it is obviously, but I think it also might be as much a deterrent or an attempt to deter other jurisdictions from doing something similar. Like, India, you try this, you see what happens, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and understand that if it comes to the point years down the road where the legal process happens and we have to comply with what you're doing, we're only doing it there.
Right.
Which makes it really difficult because wherever you may live, you may want this thing to be different, and maybe it will be, but now you have to pay extra to make it happen.
It's on the one hand, I'm a Google fan, and I use all the Google services that you saw. I just got the new Pixel phone, but on the other hand, Google does seem to be getting, at this point, so huge that it's becoming extra governmental, and I don't think anyone want to see that.
The relationship with Google is complicated, right? I mean, there can't be anyone. Well, maybe there must be somebody, but I mean, most people wouldn't just wholeheartedly go jumping into this without any qualms whatsoever. I mean, you kind of understand what you're getting by going down the Google route. There's a lot of good stuff there, obviously, and honestly, that's a big advantage that Google has over Microsoft during a similar time period because, when Microsoft was being forced to take IE or Windows Media Player or Messenger, depending on the jurisdiction, out of Windows, I don't think there were a lot of fans clamoring for that stuff per se. I mean, it wasn't, a really enthusiastic user base there. But when you talk about things like Google Search, Gmail, or Google Maps, or Google Photos even, I think most people who use that stuff rely on it and love it and couldn't imagine using some alternative or having something else.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, that's why Microsoft and Cyanogen creating a Google-free Android didn't end up being a pass. Yeah. I suspect because
or
people wanted
Amazon creating a free phone, or it's just
Who wants a Fire phone if it doesn't have the Play Store, Google Maps, Gmail? Yeah. Although times are changing, and I think there is a backlash against Google.
There's also China, and it might have been you who pointed this out when this first came up, but I believe there are 2 or 3 major phone makers in China who ship kind of non-Google Android phones, and they're actually pretty successful in China because there's a whole different kind of app set that they use there, and things like Google Maps maybe aren't as good there because they probably don't have the data.
And there's there's Baidu, there's alternative searches. Interestingly, though, I don't know if it's related at all, but we just got an analyst report from Ming-Chi Kuo, who covers China and covers Apple, and he says that the big 3, which is, I guess, Huawei, Xiaomi, and ZTE in China, all have suffered about a 10% decline in sales in the last quarter, and he thinks that that's an opportunity for Apple in China.
Yeah.
And, of course, we know that Google, I mean, it's now pretty obvious Google has serious ambitions about going back into China with search, with a censored search. And and so...
Well, once again, Microsoft's leading the way. They got the blush Surface laptops. So. Well, that's the path.
I think that might be why there's a not pink Pixel 3 phone. Who knows? And and Apple certainly has a variety of colors available. Their new XR 10R comes out as orderable on Friday and comes out next week. And pink is one of the colors, or coral as they call it.
Right.
But anyway, who knows? Post PC is the
actually. I'm sorry.
point.
Before we do that, I just wanted to. I think this is just kind of another interesting thing that's related to the Google story. 9 to 5 Google pointed. I don't know if you saw this. This is fascinating to me. Google had a hardware event last week where they announced the new Pixel phones, a new smart display, a Pixel Book tablet 2-in-1, and some other hardware. And they never mentioned the word Android once during the entire.
Wasn't that interesting?
That's amazing to me.
Yeah.
And actually, if you think about their newer services and some older services where they're renaming them, they're getting rid of the Google brand the Android brand from things. Android Messages has become Messages. Android Pay has become Google Pay. They're basically doing what Microsoft is doing with the Microsoft brand, superseding, say, the Surface brand or the
Windows.
Yeah. That's really interesting. I assume it's for basically the same reason.
Which is
and there may. Well, there's a couple of them, but the big one is that the big brand that matters the most is Google.
Right. And
a lot of people will kind of disagree with this, and we just talked about the dubious relationship everyone has with Google. But I think there's an element of trust, where you may go into it and say sort of a little bit, clenched, but you trust Google to get to where you're going when you use Google Maps. You trust that email is always going to arrive when you use Gmail. Like, you actually do trust them. I know that you have to kind of wrestle with that a little bit. Android doesn't necessarily have a great reputation, right? This is the operating system that never gets updates. There's lots of security problems.
That's really true. Yeah.
And I think that might be part of it, right? They're also kind of blending products a little bit. And so in the same way that Microsoft 365 is this kind of weird combination of Office and Windows and other things, Chromebooks run Android apps now. And even though they introduced a new Chromebook that runs Android apps, this is literally one of the primary features. It's literally a tablet. They never said Android once, not once. It's interesting.
It is.
I think it just parallels what Microsoft's doing with Windows, especially, and Surface.
I wonder if the backlash against Google is a general public backlash or only a backlash of the geeks, of the techies.
I think there is a natural backlash whenever anything gets too big.
Yeah.
But it doesn't prevent the fact that people are actually still using it, right?
Yeah.
So
I think you're right. I think people disconnect their political thought about Google and privacy from the actual using of the device and the software. And they just say, "Well, I'm going to use Gmail." That's my
complaining about Google is cheap, but drive across. Well, this country's not too hard. You could probably hit the ocean without trying. But in the United States, try driving through a couple of states without using Google Maps. I challenge you. I mean, it would be the worst experience imaginable.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
You can complain about Google the entire drive, but you're going to be using Google Maps to get there.
Excellent point.
I don't understand the psychology of it, but I mean, I certainly wrestle with it with Google, especially. I think a lot of people probably do, right? There's kind of a weird, squishy feeling there. It's like it's easy to say, like, I don't really trust them, but I do use a ton of their services.
Right.
I'm a hypocrite.
But I think that's exactly the point. Is that it's almost a dual mind, that there's a definite bifurcation between how you feel about it and your political view about it, and then what you do in your real life. It's interesting. We are getting better and better at holding two opposing points of view at the same time.
Yeah. Yep.
I think Douglas Adams
I'm the
predicted
perfect voter.
Yep. Are we in the post-PC era? And this has been triggered, I think, by Adobe Max announcements on Monday.
I mean, was anyone waiting on Adobe to make this happen? But it's interesting that they kind of did. Microsoft a few years back released their Office productivity apps on mobile first with iPhone. I think actually it was iPhone first, or was it iPad? Maybe iPad. Yeah. And then they eventually went to just iPhone, obviously, and Android as well. And they have that, and that was kind of controversial at the time, but now it's very common. But when you kind of list down the types of things you really can't do on mobile that you still need a Mac or a PC for, complex Photoshop style editing is obviously one of them. Video editing is one of them. And this week, Adobe announced full Photoshop is coming to the iPad, literally full Photoshop. And that means the actual app, it's the same code. It's obviously been tailored to work better on that kind of device with touch and pencil support and so forth. But you're creating PSD files. And this is the language Microsoft used to use about round tripping on Office files. The point of Office Mobile is you've got this complex formatted Word document or Excel spreadsheet, whatever it is. And you bring it into the mobile version of the app and you screw around with it. And it doesn't kill the internal structure of it, right? When you bring it back to the full Windows app, you haven't screwed it up. This is a big problem back in the day, and they kind of figured it out for Office productivity, and now Adobe is doing this for Photoshop, which I think is rather incredible, because you can do that same round trip, or you will be able to when it comes to the iPad soon. And then the video editor is actually something new. It's something you get through the CC Suite. You get it with Premiere Pro, but it runs on Windows, Mac, iOS, and eventually on Android as well, and that's iPhones and phones on the Android side as well as the tablets. And this is kind of brave new world stuff, right? I mean, Apple started talking post-PC in 2010 when they introduced the first iPad. Obviously, that was kind of a farce. More recently, they've done things like release an iPad Pro, which, is not, to me, not really a Surface Pro competitor, but they're trying to go in that direction. It has that high-quality smart pen called the Pencil. iOS 11, which was the release a year ago, had some productivity improvements related to iPad Pro. So they've been kind of taking these steps. But we are, 8.5 years out from the first iPad announcement, and they're very popular. But I don't think a lot of people are using them for what I would call true PC replacements, in the sense that they're doing traditional productivity tasks on them. I don't think a lot of people do that. They can do email and web browsing, obviously. This kind of thing is scary, She doesn't care. She hates Apple.
I hate Apple.
She doesn't care.
Every time I'm like, my eyes glaze over. I'm like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah, but think about what Google did when they announced this Pixel Slate, which we were debating, is this an attack on the iPad, or is this an attack on the Surface Pro, or is it both? And
it's both. It's absolutely both, right? And so, there's a sophisticated thing you can do with web apps, but obviously the big deal with the Pixel Books now is their Android app support. And though there is a complexity to that, it's the Samsung problem, right? You might have two versions of the same app, one on Android, one on Chrome OS, whatever. The reality is there's some interesting stuff there. So I think it was, what's it called? Affinity is the photo editor?
Yeah, Affinity Photo, yeah.
Right, which looks like Photoshop. It's
basically Photoshop.
It's always, yeah. I mean, so I think that they might have shown the way. You had to sort of think that the real Photoshop was going to show up eventually once you see that, and now it is.
One issue, though, is that we were talking about this yesterday on MacBreak Weekly, the Adobe Photoshop for iPad, while they say, we'll do everything you want to do in Photoshop, is not, as far as anybody can tell, feature complete. In other words, it isn't the same as Photoshop
right.
on
That's
the
true.
desktop. And
the way
will
they
it be
describe
90% of
like,
it? Will it be more than Photoshop Elements, for instance? I don't know.
I think, I don't know. Obviously, I don't know that, and I'm sure that improves over time. But for a lot of people, the ability to sit down at a very comfortable device and maybe write with that pencil and do, as a graphic artist, and do that very naturally, start the project, and then when you need to do more complex work, move it out to the Mac or PC or whatever you're using.
See, but that's because you can draw, Paul. You're an artist. Mary Jo and I get the note with the pen, and I never take it out. I get the pencil, and I never take it out because I have the pencil for all of the devices because I guess for review purposes I need to order them, but I never use it because I can't draw worth a damn.
Yeah, well, I can draw, but I also don't use it. So but there is
well, in that case.
But there are obviously Photoshop is popular. I mean, my point is only that there are people who do use this.
Oh yeah.
And
hey, if you're an artist, the Surface Studio is mind blowing, right?
Well, but the other thing here that's kind of interesting is that an iPad Pro, the processor in that computer, that thing, is actually, that's not okay. Maybe that's not the right way to say it. It's not the processor exactly, but the combination of the software and the processor is probably a faster and more performant experience than using Photoshop on a laptop like this.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's a more natural experience for sure.
Yes, because you're touching.
It's not what I want.
But yeah. No, what Apple's doing with its processors, I know Mary Jo hates them, is remarkable.
It's also scary. Yeah, it's unbelievable. Yeah.
And when you compare that to, say, the Qualcomm 835 in that NVX2, which is, a pig, Anand's benchmarks of the iPhone XS 12 Bionic processor, A12 Bionic processor, is that it's virtually desktop class. It actually outpaces some of Apple's laptops.
Yep.
That's impressive.
Yeah, and so if this couldn't come at a better time for Apple because they really didn't have a lot going on in iOS 12 for the for iPad Pro, whatever, and nothing as far as new stuff. They've been kind of in this holding pattern. So this is in some ways the last frontier for these guys. Also, just whatever it's worth, Adobe was the company that kind of screwed them over on macOS 10. So they've obviously mended that fence. This is coming out first on iPad. Both of these things are coming out first on iOS.
So much for that Microsoft Adobe partnership.
Yeah, no, that's true. So it's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
I'd always look for these little signs of life, because they've been talking about this for a long time. And last year maybe with the Pixel book, it was like, well, is this the thing? And iPad Pro with iOS 11, is this the thing? These are all little baby steps toward a future where the times when you absolutely have to use a PC get minimized. And it's a problem for the PC industry because these things work great and you don't really need to replace them that much. And, when it comes time to get a new device, you might say, well, I can, the stuff I can do on this other thing that, is friendlier or cheaper or, prettier or whatever.
All right, Mary Jo, why don't you go walk around a little bit?
Drink some beer.
Drink some beer, because Paul and I have a little something to talk about.
Leo, have you played Black Ops 4?
I have not. Have you? Dumb question.
I have. I had approximately 24 hours between the release of this game and my flight to Dublin.
I bet you didn't want to leave, did you?
23 of those hours. Yeah.
I guarantee you Paul seriously considered bringing his Xbox to Ireland with him. Guarantee you.
Right. My wife came with me on this trip, and I put it in her bag because I pack too much stuff.
We did bring it. So what's new in it? It looks like they have a Battle Royale version. I know you kind of are not.
So Battle Royale, which I played in the beta. I've not actually tried it in the new one. I was more interested in normal team deathmatch, the thing I normally play with Call of Duty games. There's no single-player campaign, which is kind of interesting.
Wow, that's that's a bummer because I'm a lonely guy. I don't want to hang out with other people, and I look for games with single-player campaigns. It's always disappointing.
Well,
Because I can't. No,
So
honestly,
Blackout is the replacement.
it comes from the fact that I'm a normal human being, and I go online and play with people like you, and I just get greased in the first 3 seconds. It's no fun.
Yeah. No, even I had about a 2-hour moment of doubt where these games are so complex when you get in. It's not clear. Am I the only one running around with fists? I mean, does everyone else seems to have like rocket launchers?
There's a 12-year-old who knows where everything is already on the map, right?
Yeah, and then you kind of figure it out, and it's like, okay, I've done this before. I get this, and it's kind of neat because it just brings back a bunch of levels from the past, but now they're beautiful in HDR, and it's super fast moving. They don't have any more of the wall running and jetpacking type stuff. And
is there a cat?
No, they did a dog again. So this one has another. They have the attack dog.
Why does anyone play this game?
I've always said the Call of Duty cat would be the killer feature of this thing. Would. You run around a corner, step on its tail, and then you're dead.
Right. Yeah.
The killer cat.
This is other stuff. Sorry. So
what else? Yeah, he's thinking.
I got sidetracked.
Call of Duty.
So for years, one of the holy grails of the Xbox was whether they would bring keyboard and mouse support to the platform. And Microsoft's actually been talking about this for the past year or so. And then I think back in June, July, maybe it was at E3 actually, they mentioned that they were going to do it this year. And so the November update is going to include the support. If you're an insider, you can get it now. I think what the fast ring is called an Xbox. I can't remember the name of it, but it's not for every game. So the way this works is the game maker has to explicitly support it, which means that if you want to run around, say, in Black Ops with a keyboard and mouse, which would make you far more accurate and deadlier than a controller user, you will not be able to do that because that would be unfair. So it's probably going to be mostly role-playing type games, slower moving things. But, there are games where being able to type a lot would be actually pretty useful. So
what game is that? Mavis speaking shoots Nazis. What is typing?
Notepad ops.
Notepad ops.
Leo, I only play one game, and I mute everyone else. I don't care about speaking to them.
The call of WordPad.
Yeah,
I love it.
So did you mean the Alpha Ring when you were talking?
The Alpha Ring, thank you. Yeah. I'm on it. I just don't even pay attention to it. But it's whatever.
I don't pay attention either, except when I hear certain words like
sure.
Yeah.
It is the Alpha Ring.
Alpha Ring.
And Mary Jo, you'll be delighted to know that the recently released October update for Xbox One.
Ooh.
Did they pull that back too?
No, that one's working fine because Dave Cutler does it. Includes, among other things, support for Amazon Alexa.
Oh, for Alexa.
So I should try talking. Now, do I need to talk into the controller? I guess I do, right?
Well, okay. So if you have a new controller, you can connect a headset to it, and yes, you can talk to it that way.
I still have my old Kinect. I could talk to that, right?
Yes, you could absolutely. Well, I assume you could. Yeah.
I'll tell you. Sure. I'll try it. I'll try it tonight, and I'll let you know.
I have no idea why anyone would want to do this. I have to be honest. I used to use the Kinect and Hey Xbox, I think was the thing to take screenshots. But they've actually integrated it into the controller, so it's so easy now to take screenshots or movie clips, whatever. I don't know. Does anyone really walk into a room and ask their Xbox to turn on with their voice? Does anyone do this?
Yeah, I like that you looked at me like I was going to answer.
I do it.
Okay. Whatever.
Xbox on.
Okay.
I do it. I love it.
Yeah. Okay.
Nice
Some
feature.
people do it.
Yeah.
Well, you can now with Alexa. So.
Excellent.
Echo on. All right. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we take a break and go to the back of the book? Do you want to take some audience questions? We've got time.
We want to take some audience questions.
Can we do that?
Yeah.
Where's the microphone? Do you have it? Aiden's got the microphone.
I'll let you handle this. I'm going to go get something to eat. I'll be right back.
He pulled the pin. We're screwed.
Yeah.
There's
a question.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Aiden.
Microphone working?
Oh, can you hear Aiden?
Yep.
Oh, Leo's leaving.
Cool. I got one quick question for you. Hi. I got one quick question for you.
Yes, sir.
Back to that Ignite keynote.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to do this, are you?
No.
No.
So Cortana, you mentioned it earlier. It's a serious question.
Yeah.
And you thought it might be the next big thing that might be killed in Microsoft. And I kind of agree.
Yeah.
Which I think is really unfortunate, because the potential of Cortana in all sorts of ways, whether it's the digital assistant or search facilities or whatever it is amazing.
Yeah.
However, you're in one of the countries where it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
one of the hundreds of countries where it doesn't work. Do you think that's probably one of the things that's killing it maybe in the large enterprise, Microsoft's big customers who have international locations, and they have to be able to service them as well as
I got to be honest,
North America?
even in the United States where it was fully supported, there's been this kind of 2-year plus period where it just kind of sat there.
Yeah.
And 2 years ago, this coming January, Brad and I sat down with Ryan Gavin at the time, who's a guy I've known forever, and he kind of spelled out the plan for Cortana. And it kind of filled me with some amount of hope that they actually had adults in charge, and maybe this was going to happen. And then the entire year went by, nothing happened. And at the very end of the year, I think that's when they announced the Harman Kardon Invoke, the one smart speaker, which was released to kind of lackluster reviews. It was a beautiful speaker, but it's the Cortana stuff, frankly, that, because they really haven't pushed forward with. They haven't kept pace with, especially with Amazon and Google. And so this past year, January came around, and this time I think it was some other publication talked to them. It wasn't Ryan Gavin, but basically had the same exact conversation, all kinds of plans for it was basically the same exact thing. This is what we're going to do, and here we are in October, and I don't really see a lot in the way of advancement. Now, granted, if you use the Cortana app on your phone, I don't know what you see here in Ireland, but nothing. Okay, so there are 3 devices now, right? There's that glass thermostat. There is the Surface headphones that are coming out in November, and then the Invoke speaker. So we've gone from 1 to 3, I guess. So okay.
Yeah. But let me stop you. So on the enterprise pick of the week, I'm going to talk a little more about the logistics of what's happening with Cortana.
Right. Look at that.
So
let me ruin her pick.
Yeah. So I have more to say about that, but stay tuned for the end of the show.
Okay.
Windows 10 S mode.
Oh no.
Mary Jo,
So
gone.
apologize.
Where's the gone?
Apologize.
looking at it from an enterprise perspective, and in the light from Windows Virtual Desktop and the game streaming service for Xbox, do you see a reason for it in the enterprise when you can stream apps, stream high quality graphics and so on?
And do I see a reason for S mode?
Yep.
I see one.
Okay.
First line workers, like if you don't want to have them on a virtual desktop, right? You want to give them a lockdown device. You only want them to be able to do one thing. That would be a nice way.
But that one thing has to be in the store.
It has to be in the store, but it could be a side-loaded app in the store.
Why can't we have a kiosk?
Use kiosk mode.
Yeah, but if you stream it, so you can publish any app.
Yeah. In other words, what you're saying, I think what you're saying is you could have S mode on the actual local system. There's all kinds of good reasons for that. Stream the full environment.
Yeah.
And that there's some form of goodness to that. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay. Sure. I mean, I think I really think there's this beautiful compromise that can happen with S mode that they just maybe now will do, that Terry Myerson has gone. And that compromise is some form of containing dangerous things. It could be streaming from a virtual environment. It could be literal containers. It could be containers like we have in the desktop bridge apps in the store. It kind of doesn't matter what the container is. But there are ways to, you still have this kind of powerful, full-featured Windows thing happening in the background. There's no way to get rid of it. But you can shield the complexity, the insecurity, the unreliability, the performance drain over time from the user, which is obviously all very valuable. I actually, it's funny. It's possible that this kind of halfway point to S mode is going to happen now. We'll just call it Windows 10, I've, like I said earlier when this came up during the show or the earlier show, was that this goal for S mode, this thing they released was like the thing that we needed 5 years from now. We're not ready for that. We don't have the infrastructure in the store, in the case for consumers, and we're starting to get it, in the enterprise, that would be necessary for that thing to be viable. So I actually think they're going to get it there, But I think cooler heads have prevailed, and maybe they're going to compromise now on it. So yes, I do think that would be viable. I didn't just say publicly that S mode was okay.
Yeah, you did. We're going to lock you down on that one. That's your grenade.
Right.
So you guys were talking about Google trying to point a finger at the EU with their new policies and those kind of things. Who do you think of the big tech companies can be slammed hardest first by the GDPR rules, and why?
Wow.
Well, Google, because they don't have any sense of data privacy at all.
Yeah.
Google has literally admitted in the past 60 days that they allow third parties to read human beings' Gmail email.
Yep.
Think about that. How that's insane. That's something they do.
Mm-hmm.
I can't think of a single defense for that. That's crazy. Mm-hmm. The whole, remember the Gmail man thing, and was that what it was called?
Gmail man.
Mark Pence, that
Scroogled.
wonderful bastard who came up with Scroogled, right? So, was that Mark Pence? Or is that his name?
Mark Pence.
Mark Pence.
Paul's idol. Mark Pence.
Well, there was something to it, right? This notion. I mean, back then we were innocent of knowing that they were even doing that.
Yeah.
Microsoft has always said, look, we have electronic means of scanning email. We're looking for malware. Mm-hmm. We're looking for spam. We're doing it for good reasons. Google's doing it so they can target ads at you, and for good reasons, right? They're doing both. I mean, I shouldn't dismiss the good part of it, but this is still like an electronic thing, right? This notion that it's always weird when you see, you got an email about a juice or something, and then there's a juice ad over in some window next to you, and you're like, how did that happen? Because of Google, right? That's the ad thing. But that's electronic, right? It's automated. The notion that there are human beings actually reading your email is kind of messed up.
Paul,
and so
you finally
Google
came along because you loved that Gmail man thing.
He did. He loved it.
Finally came along, Paul.
No, Leo, I loved the Scroogled.
You did.
Scroogled.
Campaign.
You've been Scroogled.
Right? Mark Penn, not Pence. It was Mark
Penn.
Mark
You're
Penn.
right.
Yeah, he's he was the former.
That's the guy
pollster.
we saw at the Surface Pro 3 launch,
was.
and he disappeared in a cloud of vapor, I think. When
Greasy smoke.
he put up his cape and he just disappeared into the ground. Where is he now? He must be working for a political campaign.
He's working for some campaign or something. Yeah.
Microsoft needs more evil people like that guy.
He's at I think he's at Burston Marsteller, or maybe he left. I don't know.
Yeah, he did.
He's a visiting lecturer.
No,
he's a visiting lecturer at that terrible place called Harvard University.
Yeah.
Didn't Steven Snofsky also?
Yeah.
They all go
maybe
there.
Harvard is the great institution we think it is, Leo. I don't know. I will say just real quick. I'm sorry. The company least likely to follow that is Apple, right? So for all of their kind of grandstanding on this stuff, they've kind of turned privacy into a feature and something they market. And I'm not suggesting to go use Apple's services at all. In fact, I would never do that personally. But they're actually when you think about Google specifically saying we're only going to do this in the EU. Apple is an example of a company who's saying, we're going to take the standard you've established, we're going to exceed it, and we're going to do it everywhere in the world. It's a completely different approach. It's kind of interesting. But Google,
Hi there. So at the keynote today, one of the key points that was raised was, as IT professionals, we need to be constantly learning, adapting to changes and in the marketplace and products and services. So using your unique crystal ball skills.
What should I be doing?
Yeah, what should we be doing?
First of all, the guy who told you that was an idiot. So
it was Paul, by the way, just for people.
No, it was interestingly, in the notes that we made for the talk that we did, one of the items we didn't get to was this exact thing, this notion of constantly staying educated. So one of the stories I didn't tell was that years ago, we did a tech ed, my company did a tech ed pre-con session. It was right at the start of the cloud computing migration thing. And this Exchange administrator stood up and he said, hold on a second. You're telling me that the last thing I'm going to do in my role as Exchange administrator is hand the keys over to Microsoft over in Office 365, and then they're going to show me the door. And I said, well, yes, that is going to happen. But I think the thing that happens is that, the thing that happened in that case is there was some number of years of complacency, right? That it was kind of a big deal to go from Exchange 2003 to 2007 to 2010, whatever the progress might have been. And they didn't see this other thing coming, right? And one thing I feel strongly about, and I think you do as well, is this notion of always kind of staying educated about other things. If you kind of look at it proactively, you could say, well, how could I be, of value to the company that I work for, right? Obviously, I want to be the Exchange guy, but is Exchange the be-all and all of everything? What are the other things that are adjacent to Exchange, maybe, if that's where you want to stay? And in that case, it might have made sense, and this was several years ago, to kind of look at the other offerings that were in Office 365 at the time, which are actually the same ones today, basically, which is, SharePoint or Office Communications, which became
Teams.
Skype for Business, now Teams. And kind of be the guy that, people want to go to because what's coming up, what's next, that kind of thing. I mean, it's very individual. I mentioned during our talk, and I set out to be a programmer. I mean, one thing I actually still spend tons of time, and I do this every week, is learning developer things. I go through a lot of developer online courses now. This has become quite a thing. Many of them are free. I've paid for some as well. And I don't pretend. I'm not saying we're going to become a developer again. I'd probably be a terrible developer, but I like staying up on this world, and it helps me speak to the people who are developers and the people at Microsoft who create developer products. In my case, so I mean, I think there's one of the nice things about today is there's such an awesome opportunity for learning, and so much of it is free.
Yeah.
Microsoft is incredible e-learning facilities if that's where you want to stay, but then there are all these online places like Udacity and Udemy and so forth. It's just kind of incredible.
Yeah.
And I think it's not hard. You don't really need to be too much of a prophet. To sort of understand where things are going in the Microsoft world, right?
Right. I think one thing to think of is they're going to keep going up the stack.
Yeah.
Like Microsoft Managed Desktop, they're coming right at a lot of people's business where you've been provisioning stuff, and that's what they want to do now, right? So I think in Microsoft's case, you have to remember the way they recently reorged a year ago to sell is along vertical markets. So I would say if I were in your shoes, I would also look at vertical markets. If there's something specific, a specific industry that your company really targets that's in one of the key verticals like insurance, financial, healthcare, I would start developing more vertical expertise than you might have in the past, because that's not commodity stuff. Like that's more specialized.
Yeah. They're kind of they're like an amorphous blob. They're just taking over more and more. I mean, it's a tough thing because, the argument obviously is, well, who could manage this infrastructure better than us? Well, maybe the company that created it, and you have that kind of a weird, okay, so there's always going to be, it depends on your business, the industry, the EU is very interesting, obviously, because of the GDPR as well. You may have some kind of hybrid scenario happening in the future where the data has to be managed in a certain way in a certain place, and maybe that would be something, a kind of a thing to look into. I mean, but yeah, it's gone from low-hanging fruit in the back in the day was storage and Exchange, I would say, and we're moving into like PC and device management in the cloud. It's really, they're taking over everything.
I know. I think something else to keep in mind too is we joke a lot about like AI is the new buzzword. Everybody's doing AI, everything's AI, but there are a lot of tools and services in Azure that Microsoft offers that you could start dabbling with. And think how cool that would be to be the AI guy in your company and already be there when your company starts shifting there. So I think some of these things that you're just like, oh, that's so out of my league. If you start playing around with cognitive services or Azure machine learning and just do some really rudimentary test things, you'll be that much further ahead of other people who are competing against you.
Yeah, it sounds kind of cheap to say, but I feel like IT has been fighting fires for a long time.
Yeah.
And the one kind of little bit of sunshine here is that this gives you an opportunity maybe to be more proactive and kind of actively seek how can I benefit this place instead of just fixing things as they come up? Is there something that we can service that we can use that I could manage that would make things better for the people who work for customers or whatever, and for all of Microsoft's kind of taking over the infrastructure stuff, there are all these other services out in the world now, and including many from Microsoft itself that will still require people at the company and so forth.
Great, thanks.
Sure.
This is a good audience. They have lots of questions. Yeah, I'm really happy. Gave me a chance to have lunch, read the newspaper, get a cup of coffee.
Hi,
Hi. Earlier you were mentioning at the keynote as well about the fact that when Satya became sort of head of Microsoft, they had considered looking outside of the company. Looking forward a number of years to when Satya does retire, let's say they do the same thing and they decide this time they're going to have joint CEOs and they are going to go outside the company and it's you two. What would the first change be that you would make to Microsoft?
Yikes. If we were the co-CEOs of Microsoft?
Wow. Be a lot of arguing in that boardroom.
There would. What would be the first thing we would do?
You mean like the first thing we would change?
Something that...
Possibly strategy, not necessarily moving people around, but maybe a strategic direction. Mm-hmm. Would you offload the Xbox division?
Yes.
Yeah, but it has to be...
That's just so Paul doesn't talk about it on the show anymore.
Okay.
Yeah.
You know, it has to be something that you would agree on. You know, again, it could be offloading LinkedIn or some area that you want to acquire.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great question.
That's a great question.
I don't have a strategy
all the time.
to say, but I think the aspect of Microsoft that I'm a little uncomfortable with today is it's kind of a touchy-feely company in what I think is kind of a non-positive way. And what I mean by that is it's not a charity, right? Like when it's not a kumbaya moment with Microsoft and all its competitors over a campfire, like I feel like they're almost not competitive enough.
I know, we talk about this a lot now.
Look, I don't want the bad old Microsoft of 1998 or so coming back. I mean, we don't want that culture again. But I feel like they've lost a certain competitive edge in their zeal to partner with anyone and everyone to do, you know, we're gonna take they took the patents that they earned billions of dollars a year on from Android and Linux licensees, and they threw it all away. And they said, now we're going to use this to protect those same companies. What? Like, I just don't even. It's bizarre.
Yeah.
It's almost weirdly altruistic, which normally you shouldn't complain about. But I'm not talking about a person. It's a company. It has shareholders. It's supposed to make money. It's supposed to earn market share. And you know, like I'm a little confused. It seems a little too touchy-feely. I don't know how else to say. I don't know if touchy-feely is a thing in Ireland. Does that make sense? Do you want to say touchy-feely? Yeah.
I also think it might make sense, just throwing this out there, to split the company into two. I really think, I think the enterprise and the consumer interests of Microsoft are very different. They keep saying they're the same side of the same coin. I don't believe that. I feel like either you stay in consumer and you really get serious about consumer, or you're all in on enterprise and no more consumer.
Yeah,
you become IBM. Sorry, they don't want to be said to be IBM, but they should be IBM. That's where the money is.
Yeah, one thing I complain about a lot with Microsoft is that they have that part of the culture that has persisted at the company is what I call the inability to finish a job, right? And so Microsoft promotes and rewards people who come up with new things because it's new and exciting and it gets a lot of press and there's a lot of reward to that. And then the thing ships and it doesn't do very well, it goes nowhere, whatever happens. And those people who were all kind of rallied around this inside of Microsoft are now moving on to the next thing and they're gone. And the people who are left, Cortana, I think, suffered from this, years go by and nothing changes, there's no meaningful changes to the product. And they don't go, and people are complaining. The customers who are using it are saying, well, it doesn't do this and it doesn't do this. The finish the job is when you make that stuff happen. You come in, Microsoft needs to have a culture that rewards making things better that are already there, not just doing something new.
Right.
And
to compensate people, right?
Yes.
For doing that.
I mean that, right. I mean, literally reward that.
Yeah. We've talked about that in Windows 10 a lot. Like, for Windows 10, it feels like people get celebrated and promoted because they come up with a new thing. But how about the people trying to fix the UI or complete the UI or just make the fundamentals work? Like, are they compensated more? They should be.
There's a lot of kind of half-assed things in Windows or elsewhere. Microsoft Windows is my big focus, but that I feel could be easily fixed if someone just spent some time on it. I will say, one of the things that's been kind of nice this past year, these last two major feature updates have been devoid of kind of useless new features, big stupid new things. And there has been a lot of fine-tuning work, right? But it's kind of hard to celebrate stuff. Windows 10, for example, lost the ability to arbitrarily scale individual parts of the user interface, right? They just have one scale button, so the whole thing kind of like blob-like goes up and down. One of the things that's nice from using a mobile phone, depending on the system, is you can scale the fonts, Well, that just came back in the latest version of Windows, and it's like, yay, but that was in Windows 7, that was in Windows Vista. That was, so I'm glad. I mean, don't get me wrong. Like they're finally starting to do a bit of this work. But this is still a cultural problem at Microsoft.
So your first change would be to change the culture?
Yes.
Agreed, Mary Jo?
Maybe. Yeah, but not to totally go back to the old days.
Right.
But maybe dial it back a little bit.
Boy, they're doing pretty well.
It's a weird thing, again, the complaint. The company's so compassionate. How are you complaining about this,
I know. We sometimes, like when another company strikes out against Microsoft, Oracle, Salesforce, I'll call them and I'll be like, so what are you going to do? They just did X. We're going to partner with them.
Yeah,
great.
we
But
love those
what?
guys.
I'm like, no.
Yeah.
I know you guys would like better corporate communications.
Well,
yes.
Yeah. Well, okay, yeah, but that's very particular to us. Honestly, they've given us quite a...
No, it's because it's through you to us. I think the way they handled 1809 was not impressive.
I will actually, one other thing I'll say to this. Amazon is still undergoing a search for second headquarters, right? The United States somewhere, probably, maybe Canada, but probably the United States. Microsoft came up publicly at the time and said, we see no need to do that. We're going to just we have one headquarters, that's enough. And when they said that kind of hit me the wrong way. I thought, and someone was asking about Cortana or I guess it was Aidan, and it's very well understood that a lot of Microsoft products and services are not as full-featured outside of the United States. I think Microsoft would benefit very greatly from splitting their headquarters into two different international locations, at least two, to better understand those markets, right? And better serve those markets. We live in a world that is completely international. Being so U.S. focused here in 2018 makes no sense. The fact that the guy who runs Microsoft is from India, and like I said earlier, and the earlier thing we did with is a far more diverse company than it has ever been, has not stopped it from going down this kind of U.S. centric path. It's really strange.
Yep. That's a good point.
Hi, I have a question. Throughout the years of you reporting on Microsoft, did you feel difference in attitudes from your sources depending on the leadership, or was it mostly down to the individuals you would have dealt with?
Like a change in how they talk to us and what they tip us about?
Yes, in a way.
A definite change. I feel like when your sources disagree with the way the company is being run, they're more apt to tip you about things they don't like.
Yep.
So I feel like I got a lot more tips about Microsoft when other regimes were in power, who people disagreed with. They'd find a memo for us and like, hey, look at what they're doing, So I feel like right now, the kinds of tips I get are different because I feel like a lot more of the people who traditionally would tip a journalist are on board with where things are going.
Yeah, there's a really interesting phenomena at Microsoft now supporting the thing that we just complained about, right? Where people up and down the structure and people who are really technical, like Jeffrey Snover is a good example of this, or Chris Capicella, who's the chief marketing officer of the company, who are kind of really engaged in this rah-rah, we love everyone's, accessibility for everybody, blah, 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 whatever. And it's hard in the face of that, to complain, right? When everyone up and down the stack is just fully like-minded, and yeah, I don't have a lot of people, I still do have a few, there are people who disagree with us, obviously, who kind of understand what we're trying to do and they don't like what they see and they're trying to get if you could please communicate this, it's really big. It does still happen, but there's definitely less of it for sure. When Steven Snofsky ran Windows, there was
we got lots of tips.
Yeah, there was
awesome.
There were a lot of but even Terry Myerson, who I personally liked a lot of people really disagree with him internally as well.
Yep.
And I used to hear from them.
Do we have a hard stop here at 9? So we should probably do back of the book and get out.
Okay.
You don't have to go home. 15 stay here.
15 more minutes. We'll wrap this up in just a bit. Paul Thurrott and Mary Jo Foley in Dublin, Ireland, for the Micro Warehouse Cloud Conference, and it's fun to have you guys. And boy, what a great! I think this is the best, most engaged audience you've ever had. I mean, they really had lots of questions. That's fantastic. Thank you guys.
We were told they were shy.
We heard that.
Not so
It was
shy.
an urban legend.
Not so. Our show today brought to you by Rocket Mortgage. If you're in the market for a new home, most of us will not be writing that giant check without a little help. You need a loan, right? A home mortgage. And chances are you're looking around. You might think about going to a big bank. But there's a problem there. You got to go into the bank, right? You got to dress up, look prosperous, fill out a long application, do a lot of homework too. We bought our house, Lisa and I bought our house 5 years ago, and did do that. We went to the biggest bank at the time, and 2 months later, we're still giving them, okay, now we need your pay stubs from your employer from 12 years ago, kind of thing. And it was like crazy, and we're faxing it to them. We almost lost the house because the seller was, well, guys, we're going to sell it to somebody else. Do you still want it? That was embarrassing. It was also a little anxious making. And this is enough anxieties about writing this big check and, choosing the place you and your family are going to live for years to come. It's enough anxiety. Along comes Quicken Loans, now the #1 lender in the country. They beat that big bank. And by the way, deservedly so. 8 years in a row now, #1 in customer satisfaction, according to J.D. Power. And I think that tells you something right there. They also beat the big bank in December in terms of volume. And a lot of it is their customer-centric focus. They really think about the experience. They understand how anxious it can be, and they do everything they can to make it easy. For instance, Rocket Mortgage. This is their entirely online mortgage approval process. You could actually do it right now on the web, on your phone, anywhere you can get online. Just go to rocketmortgage.com/windows. It's Quicken Loans. It's just that's the branding on the online application. Rocketmortgage.com/windows. Create an account. Answer a few simple questions. It's really a 3-step process they call the power buying process. Step 1, within usually about 10 minutes or less, while you're there on the phone, they're going to give you pre-qualified approval. They'll say, these are the loans for which you qualify based on what you've told us. You choose the term, the down payment. You choose the interest rate that fits your needs. And they say, okay, you're pre-qualified. That's when the elves at Rocket Mortgage get to work. Within a day, usually about 24 hours, they're going to verify income, assets, and credit, usually without anything from you, but sometimes they might ask you for some questions. But all this is going to happen in one day. And once they've done that, they'll give you verified approval and a letter that says they got the loan, which is awesome. It gives you the strength of a cash buyer. When you're going to a seller, you don't have to say, well, we'll buy it contingent on our getting the loan, which most people do. You're like a cash buyer. You say, well, no, we got the loan. We want the house. That moves you right to the front of the line. And these days, it's kind of a seller's market. Any advantage you can get to get the house you want. But there's a third part, and this is something important nowadays because as interest rates start to go up, the Fed's raising rates now every quarter, and that means home loan rates are going up. That is potentially terrifying because you're looking for a house as fast as you can. You don't want to be rushed, but if every time those rates go up even like a quarter point, over a 30-year loan, that's tens of thousands of dollars. It's a huge amount of money. So there's pressure on you, pressure you don't need to buy now. No, you want to have the time to find the right place. That's where part 3 comes in. They call it, and it's completely new and exclusive, it's Rate Shield Approval. They will lock that rate. The rate they told you in step 1, they'll lock that in for up to 90 days while you shop. Interest rates can go up. The Fed can raise rates. The LIBOR can go up. Whatever the interest rate that your loan is tied to can go up, and it doesn't matter. You're locked. You have a guaranteed rate. This is cool too. The rates, if they go down, you get to go down. So you're only maxed. It can't go higher than this, but it could go lower. Either way, you win. And that's exactly what I think of as customer-centric, thinking about your experience and making the experience right for you. That is, in a nutshell, Quicken Loans and Rocket Mortgage. This is what you want. If you're going to go home shopping or you're looking for a refi, rocketmortgage.com/windows. That's what you need to remember. Now, here's the legal boilerplate I got to read. Rate Shield approval is only valid on certain 30-year purchase transactions. Additional conditions or exclusions may apply based on Quicken Loans data in comparison to public data records. Equal housing lender. That's an important one. Licensed in all 50 states. And NMLS ConsumerAccess.org number 3030. Well, here's what you need to remember. RocketMortgage.com/windows, the place to go when it's time to buy your next home. Just remember that. Bookmark it. You'll have it there. Sign up for the account if you want. There's no charge for that, no obligation. RocketMortgage.com/windows. We return to a cavern in Ireland. Where Mary Jo Foley and Paul Thurrott have locked themselves, promising not to come out until they do the back of the book.
Yes.
I am embarrassed to report that my tip and one of my app picks are ironically and hypocritically U.S. only. So
I'm sorry. Oh.
Yeah, that's me. Sorry. So just don't listen to this. If you buy an Xbox One now in the United States, only for a limited time, we're not sure how long until supplies last, you actually get a free Amazon Echo Dot,
which you don't need.
So,
right.
Which you don't need. I assume the Amazon Echo Dot works better here than Cortana. Ironically, one of my app picks is also Cortana 3.0 in beta form with features in the UI, conversational features. So it does a lot more voice control type stuff. So you can tell it you want to listen to your new email. I won't go into that too much. All right. So, but the other one that does apply to you is Google released Chrome 70 today. And this is the version that finally has the full-featured PWA support, Progressive Web Apps. So if you go to Progressive Web Apps like Starbucks or Spotify, whatever, you can actually install them in Windows 10. So they'll be installed there in the Start menu. You can uninstall them from the Start menu. They have colored and branded title bars and so forth. So it's kind of the first major step toward that. If you use a Mac or Linux, it's actually going to come sometime in the next 4 to 6 months as well. So this ability to install web apps as native apps on all platforms is going to be real. Well, all platforms except for iOS, I guess, within the next few months. Is that quick enough?
That was quick.
Embarrassingly U.S.-centric picks.
Oh, well.
What's your enterprise pick of the week, Mary Jo Foley?
Right. So enterprise pick has to do with Cortana also. And just recently, Microsoft quietly, with no fanfare, moved the Cortana team out of research and into the experiences and devices team at the company. So this is significant for a couple of reasons. One is we were talking about how Cortana is morphing into more of a kind of like a digital aid instead of a standalone digital assistant, something that will help you complete tasks and do tasks that are more complex and require the Graph API. So I think by doing this, you may see Cortana becoming less US-centric because it's now part of the team that is run by Windows and Office. I feel like it no longer can just be like, oh yeah, we have this built into Office, but it doesn't work anywhere except the US. That's not going to be acceptable. So I believe this move, org chart-wise, may be very significant to how you'll be able to take advantage of Cortana built into things like Office going forward. So that's the enterprise pick.
Very nice. And I think you
have two beer picks.
That's right. I think that's the right thing to do, given where you are.
How is there not a whiskey pick, Mary Jo? What's happening?
Right. So today we have 2 beer picks of the week. Because I have to say, in the 3 days I've been here, I've been very impressed with your craft brewing scene here in Dublin. When I came 20 years ago, I haven't been here in 20 years. It was Guinness or that was about it. Now you have a lot of excellent craft beers, and I've sampled more than a few in 3 days.
I can verify that.
You've seen me do this. Research, guys. So the first beer pick is from Galway Brewing. It's a double IPA they do called San Juice. What's amazing about this to me is this is a West Coast U.S. double IPA style that tastes as good as any West Coast U.S. double IPA I have had. Nice and not juicy, appropriately bitter, very tasty, easy to drink. Beer pick number 2 is from upstairs, Urban Brewing, right above us here. They make a saison that is with lemon verbena and sage. I've never seen those things in a saison before. I will
I've never
report
seen them on a plate before.
I will report they were delicious. Little lemony, little bit of sage, not too much sage. Urban Brewing makes a lot of their own beers here. They also have an excellent pub upstairs here in Dublin that is definitely worth visiting if you come here. So not one, but 2 beer picks of the week.
Incredible.
So amazing. You've done it again, Mary Jo.
I would like to voice my jealousy for the fact that there is Irish whiskey that we cannot get in the United States.
Yeah.
We have some forms of Jameson there. I think maybe 4 or 5 types, 4 types probably. Apparently there are many more types. And
Who knew?
yeah,
It's not too late to try them all, Paul.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to bringing some of them home.
Nice.
So we'll see how that goes.
You're in the land of Uskaba. Paul Thurrott is at thurrott.com, THURRO good.com, and in this case, doubleshot.com. That's his blog. And Mary Jo Foley is at ZDNet. Her blog's at allaboutmicrosoft.com, and they are in Ireland, but they'll be back home next week for more Windows Weekly. We do the show U.S. time around 11 a.m. That's Pacific. That'd be about 2 Eastern time. 1800 UTC. You can do the math from there. I hope you'll join us if you want to watch it live. Go to twit.tv/live. That's our live stream. You can also visit the chat room, which is going on as we speak. Our chatters are at...
Did she do double blind testing? Wow.
No, but she was double blind.
Yeah, by the end of the testing, yes. That's Beatmaster. He's in Switzerland. He could have run over. Beatmaster, why don't you run on over? Just up the coast a bit. irc.twit.tv. That's where that chat room lives. You can also go to our website, twit.tv/ww, to get every episode going back in the past, all 591 episodes. Or, and I think this is the best thing to do, subscribe in your favorite podcast application. Go to twit.tv/subscribe, or just fire up your podcast app, whatever it is, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Stitcher, Slacker. Microsoft, I'm sure, has a podcast app on its Surface phone. Oh, no, never mind. And if you open that up and you search for Windows Weekly, you'll find it. Subscribe, and that way, the minute a new show is available, you'll get a copy on your phone. You can listen at your leisure. You can also ask Cortana or the Google Home or Siri or even Amazon's Echo to play the most recent version. Usually the syntax is something like, play Windows Weekly podcast. And that's a nice way to listen. I think more and more people are doing that. Paul, Mary Jo, thank you. Have fun. You did a great job.
Also, thank you to Aiden at Micro Warehouse and everyone for coming out. I really appreciate it.
MWH.IE. And we'll see you next time on Windows Weekly. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, thanks.
So this is the behind-the-scenes video from the mixer's point of view. Look at that. That cavern is so cool. That's a beer warehouse where they transport beer on its way into the country. They store it temporarily. Nice view. And a great audience, too. It was a lot of fun. Cool.